When I was a kid, I had an irrational fear of our basement, though. If I do say so myself, our basement was kind of scary for a kid. It was a pretty big basement. There was an L-shaped couch right in the middle of the basement that sat right in front of a wooden support column. In front of the couch was the big old Bow TV we had down there, which had all of our video game consoles plugged into the layout of the basement, was set up as a big circle that went around the couch. Basically, there was a booth and table in one corner and old bar in the other. Corner which had the door to the laundry room behind it, and then in the other corner, closest to the stairs, was the doorway to my dad's little workout room. My dad rented out the upstairs of the house to an old lady named Ruth, so we only had access to the first floor and the basement. My dad would usually hang out in the living room on the first floor, hence why our video games were all downstairs on the crappy TV, because our dad didn't really hang out down there. I'm the youngest sibling. I have 2 older brothers. I was anywhere from 6 to 8 years old when this happened. My older brothers weren't home, so they must have been having play dates with other kids. It was just my mom and I, home at the time. My dad was likely at work. Usually I'd be playing video games with my brothers in the basement, so I wouldn't be scared. But since I was alone, I remember being kind of creeped out. As I walked down the stairs, that basement door sucked because it wouldn't stay open by default. It would just slowly creep shut unless something was propped in front of the door to keep it open, so it just made me feel even more isolated from the upstairs and my mom. I was playing whatever old video games I was into at the time. Alone on that gray fluffy couch, any little sound in the basement would make me pause my game and look in whatever direction I heard it. There would always be creepy sounds that would come from the laundry room, and even though I grew to expect them, they'd still sometimes creep me out. They were usually familiar sounds, though, and so when I heard an unusual sound come from inside the laundry room, I paused my game. It wasn't the sound of the laundry machine or the boiler clacking. It was the sound of something dropping to the floor and bouncing once or twice. I remember jumping off the couch and running upstairs to find my mom saying, "There's someone in the basement," and I remember my mom's calm reaction and asking me what happened, and then explaining to me that nobody is down there to make me feel better. She went back down to the basement with me, and she opened the door to the laundry room, turned on the light, and looked inside for a few seconds. Then she shut the door and said, "There's no one in there," so naturally I felt better. And she went back upstairs, and I went back to playing video games. I can't remember how much time passed before I went back upstairs to eat a snack. My mom was already preparing dinner. I remember it being dark out now, which only added to my fear of the basement. The basement had 2 small windows, which did allow some light in during the day, so at night it was just completely pitch black down there. I did end up going back down there, though, and then eventually I heard the sound of the heater in the laundry room turn on. Only it was extremely loud. I turned around and noticed the laundry room door was now open. I got off the couch and slowly walked to the laundry room door. It was pitch black inside of there. I was scared to turn on the light. I just wanted to shut the door. I gathered up enough courage to run at the door and slam it shut and then run back to the couch for some reason. I just felt safer on the couch, I guess, for whatever reason. I didn't once think that it was strange that the door was magically open now. Even after my mom had closed it earlier, the next thing I remember was hearing a man's voice from behind me. And at first my brain didn't register what I just heard. It didn't seem real at first. I turned around and saw some sickly-looking man sitting in the booth in the corner of the basement with his arm on the table and his head resting on his fist. He said, "My God, how you've grown." I was frozen stiff. I couldn't even scream. I just looked at the man in the corner with my mouth hanging open, twitching. He slowly stood up in this crooked, hunched-over posture, and it seemed like he was slowly starting to walk towards me as he said, "Your mother won't let me see you guys." I finally was able to scream, and I just bolted for the stairs. I was screaming, "Mom," the whole way up to the kitchen. I slammed the basement door and locked it. I screamed and cried to my mom that there's a man downstairs. I saw the look in her face, and she was petrified. She called 911, and I strangely don't remember what happened to the moments before the police showed up. I just remember a bunch of police officers getting there and going down to the basement. I was with my mom and a police officer in a safe room while they found him, and the man they found was my uncle, my estranged uncle, my mom's brother, who was basically excommunicated from our family for being a child rapist. Our parents never wanted him anywhere near us, nor did my mom want any contact with him. He broke into the house and had been hiding in the basement. For God knows how long I didn't even know his face, as the last time I'd seen him. I was a baby, I haven't seen him since then. He went back to prison for another 4 years, for another sex crime. We don't know where he is now. If you are enjoying the video so far, please consider subscribing to the channel to support us. Thank you very much. It was approaching Halloween. We were in the middle of October. My cousin Andy's birthday is October 15th. So for his 12th birthday, we all went over to our Uncle John and Aunt Melissa's house, as they were throwing him a family birthday party. We have a pretty big family, and so our family gatherings can often get hectic. It was still warm outside, so the party was mostly in the backyard. Their house is pretty big, and we always used to love playing hide-and-seek type games because of it. Andy and I are the same age. My older brother Chase is 2 years older than me. He would play with us too. Our other cousins were a little older, but they'd still play with us too. We just make teams and take turns as hiders and seekers and give each other time limits to find the opposing hiding team. If you were found, you'd have a chance to run outside to the backyard to be safe. If you managed to not get tagged, we could use the whole house minus our aunt's and uncle's bedroom. And I'm not exaggerating when I say there were hundreds of places to hide in the basement. There's a separate room that's considered Aunt Melissa's fashion room, as we call it. She's a fashion designer, and inside of it she has a bunch of mannequins with different pieces of clothing. She's designed, some are full-body mannequins, others are just torsos without heads and regular stands underneath them. She also has some studio lights, some official camera equipment, and a green screen drop. After a short period of playing the game, Chase and I decided to take cover in the basement. Chase hid somewhere in the main section of the basement. While I hid in the fashion room, I actually grabbed 2 blankets from the ottoman in the basement and brought them into the fashion room, one for me to hide under, and the other one I was going to throw over one of the mannequins as a decoy, with the blanket thrown over it. It genuinely looked like it could be a person hiding underneath. I thought it would be a funny little gotcha moment whenever someone yanked the sheet off of it. So I got into my hiding position under a desk in the corner of the room, and I hid under the blanket. Now it was a waiting game. That was honestly a big chunk of the game. If your hiding spot was good after quite a long time. I heard commotion outside in the main room of the basement, as Chase and one of my cousins were laughing and yelling, presumably as Chase was being chased around the basement. I heard them then stomping up the stairs by the sound of it. Chase was trying to make it to the yard without being tagged, but after that I waited in silence for over 10 minutes. Easily, I was getting uncomfortable in this position and quite honestly bored. Finally, Chase came downstairs into the room and called my name, and then he said the food was being served outside, so the game was over. I was starving. I hurriedly rushed upstairs into the backyard, where all the catered food was now out and being served at some point, after eating and having a conversation with Aunt Melissa. I remembered that I totally left those 2 blankets in her fashion room. Most importantly, that I left one over her mannequin, which she would not be happy about. So after going to the bathroom, I went back down to the basement and to the fashion room, where I turned on the light and saw that the blanket was no longer on that mannequin, but rather the blanket was covering something else. It appeared to be another mannequin, though this one seemed to be propped in a seated position, which I wasn't aware of any mannequins that were in a seated position. The closer I got, I started to realize that it was moving, and I heard breathing on top of that. There was this funky smell that wasn't there before. There was a person under there, but who? I laughed and said, "Who is that?" They didn't answer. I felt this feeling of uneasiness growing in my stomach. I looked down to see if I could see the shoes they were wearing, but what I saw was the bare feet of a black person. Nobody at this party was black back. I made a beeline for the exit, but instead I hurried back outside and told my uncle to contact the authorities. As soon as my uncle and a few others heard me say something about someone being in the basement, panic set in. I followed them down to Melissa's fashion room, where I saw that the blanket had fallen to the floor and that whomever had been hiding beneath it had escaped. I swear to God I could smell their feet and heard their screams. My entire family searched the house, and finally we found Ely. My uncle called the police, taking my claims very seriously. When the police showed up, it was kind of a whole scene, and everyone at the party was concerned. Neighbors even came out to see if everything was okay. Every possible hiding place was checked, and no one was in the house. I didn't make it up, though. It was genuine what I saw, and I just wish he did turn up so that everyone would have seen I was right. Even if mostly everyone did believe me, I still just wanted them to see what I saw for themselves during parties. They leave the doors unlocked since family circulating in and out for hours. So it's no shocker that someone off the street could have just walked right in, maybe a homeless person, which would account for the smell. The whole thing still just felt so crazy, and it's a haunting memory.